Doomsday 3.
We had Doomsday 1.
No question in my mind.
He came from one of the toughest areas of Phoenix, most of his friends were in the course.
Praying for safety and
On the defense, talking about it. You better get your ass the ball. You better get the ball.
I just gotta say, when it comes to former Dallas,
Different.
For sure, and they would have thrown it off because
This guy gets off you.
Smaller from and then I go to bed every night like G man, I promise you that we got a special man, what is up, Cowboys Nation? A good early morning to the early risers who weren't out partying all night. Welcome to the Cowboys Cave this morning. You got your boy Mike Tag here. Obviously got G-Reg in the house.
What's
feeling
up?
great? Season is getting here. The season is now officially going. We're getting closer and closer to making this thing happen. And now the only thing is just kind of the cut down days. So we'll get into that probably next week on some shows. But as you guys are rolling in, make sure you hit that thumbs up. Make sure you hit that like, subscribe, share, all that kind of good stuff, man. Definitely appreciate it. Good morning, Cut, Steve, the rest of the crew, Cowboys Nation, all you guys kind of rolling in, man. It's good to see people up early. It means you guys weren't out partying too much. You know, I like it. So how you doing, Greg, this morning?
Doing good, man. Hey, Cuts, I lost my koozie, man. I don't know. I've been around this house like a crazy man trying to find my damn koozie. I don't know where it's at. I feel naked.
It's gotta be somewhere. You'll find it.
I'll find it later. It'll probably hit me right in the face.
Yeah. Well, we got our taste of some college football. If you guys missed the show, we did a live stream during the Falcons, Cowboys. That was fun. Kind of looking at the last preseason game. Felt a lot better. At least me personally felt a lot better feeling going into the season. The first two games, the Cowboys just didn't look like they had all wheels in motion, but they had some stuff going that time. And don't forget, Monday night, we're going to have Jesse Holly is going to be in the cave. So special show, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central. So make sure you guys check that out. And then we'll be doing some stuff before college football. The real weekend, I'll be going down to Miami to the 305 to see the Canes and Notre Dame play. I mean, it's just going to be a great weekend with big games. And then you're leading up to the Cowboys opener on Thursday night. So, man, it's going to be a lot of fun, man. Looking forward to football's finally back. It's like the world is at peace now. Everything's come together. My Saturdays, my Sundays are set. I don't know if my wife's happy about it, but it is what it is.
Yeah, that's the time of the year where they ain't happy at all. It's your football now.
No. So we wanted to do this morning's show is just kind of that, look back at that documentary. I don't know if a lot of you guys had the opportunity. Hopefully you guys did. Love to get your feedback on it and kind of interaction with it as we kind of break it down. I went back and watched it again. I mean, episode 3 is just phenomenal. Just that NFC championship and just everything leading up and the backstories and the history between the Niners and the Cowboys. I mean, to me, it'd be hard pressed to say that's not the greatest rivalry for the Cowboys. Is that Niners? I mean, Steelers, yes, but only because the Niners are in our conference and in in the NFC and the history that there was there, but in the early 80s into the 90s and even recently in the 2000s where kind of flipped hands and now San Francisco's had the upper hand. Just a great episode. Just a great episode.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize the Niners rivalry goes back even to Roger Staubach days. A lot of people don't know that. Back when the artificial turf was the hard artificial turf, Roger Staubach had to get past the 49ers to get to the first Super Bowl. So those guys, it was either the first one or the second Super Bowl. So the 49ers have been a rivalry for the Cowboys for a long, long time. It just hasn't been talked about because way back then it wasn't social media. A lot of broadcasting was few and far between. But recently, it's been our biggest rivalry because they're in our conference. But that I think episode 3 was the one where they had that big battle to get in the Super Bowl. That first game, I think it was, and I'm gonna tell you, that was a war when they played that back in the documentary and showed the plays and what went on that game, play after play, the talk that was going on. That was an actual war.
Yeah,
I mean, that was that should have been the Super Bowl.
Well, that's the way it was. Like, in the NFC was so dominant in that era, even before the Cowboys. The NFC just dominated the AFC for all of those years, and it was pretty much the Super Bowl, right? 92 was the Super Bowl, 93 was the Super Bowl, 95 was even considered a Super Bowl, even though it was the Packers. It just felt that way. But looking back at that, and I don't want this to turn this into a Jerry Jones hate fest. I mean, we beat that ad nauseum. I really want to look at kind of when you hear the story, because it is an interesting story. I mean, you got to give. I mean, me personally, I got to give credit where credit's due for him. He mortgaged his life, his future, family, everything to buy that team, and they were in debt. And you even look back at the Deion Sanders signing. I think it was a $13 million signing bonus, and he was like, "I only had $12 million in the bank." I mean, you're mortgaging stuff trying to get something going. And when you listen to that story and you kind of hear where he's at, do your feelings on him change? Not necessarily as the GM, but like as a person, as the owner. Let's look at that first before we attack the GM side. But I mean, what is your feelings? Any different watching that, pro or con, as the owner or as the man of Jerry Jones?
You can't help for watching it if you watch it, because it brings you in and you can't stay away from it. I stayed up to 3 o'clock in the morning when the first night it came out and watched all 8 series because they were so compelling. I couldn't pull away. Now, being one of those people that like to look at logic, I have to give him a lot of credit for how he attained the team, his goal. But the biggest credit I want to give him was how he stuck it to the NFL. To me, all this other stuff Jerry did, the accomplishments to get the team and all that, great. Okay, fine. You got him. But the biggest thing that really gave me a heartfelt feeling for him and felt on his side and made me, during watching the show, saying, "Get their ass, Jerry." First time in my life ever said that, was how he stuck it to the NFL. I always knew that the NFL had a little market, but I didn't know that the NFL was their own little mafia where they controlled all of the proceeds that came in from it, and they divided among themselves just like a pyramid scheme. It was ridiculous. And that's why back then when players used to complain, I didn't really I understood they're complaining, but I didn't understand the root of what they were talking about until I watched this. And what they were basically saying is all of these owners got together and they decided they're going to get these contracts with whoever, and they're going to revenue share among themselves so they can become billionaires, and the players would be used as fodder and wouldn't even share some of that money with the NFL Player Association or give these guys the contracts they deserve. Jerry went in there and said, "I'm tired of this." And he really did it, Mike, because he was risking everything like his toenails to keep that team, and he knew he was going in debt big time. He had to find another way to bring in revenue, and that's what really started it for him doing that and going against the rules in the NFL. But I admire him for that, how he shook him up, and then he shook him up again and something else to do the same thing. So for that, I give him all the kudos in the world, because remember how some of the owners were talking about how mad they were with him?
Yep.
Yeah, because he broke up that mafia. And then now he was rich and he could take care of his team, because all they wanted to do was take the team away from him.
No, and I mean, he went through a lot in those early years. I mean, a lot of that, and then trying to, he's a businessman. You had to give him credit, but wanting to get his own sponsors, wanting to be able to do his own thing, where, like you said, the owners kind of had that mafia on it, and it's like, hey, this is my team. I mean, if I can market him and I could do this, I can make a lot more money. And what it ended up doing, it made the NFL even bigger. Then all the other owners started jumping on top of it and started doing that. So he was an outlaw amongst the NFL owners, but a lot of those owners, the money that they've got, and they showed the least valuable franchise is the Cincinnati Bengals at $5.7 billion.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got the Cowboys at 12 point whatever. I mean, this is every team are multi-billion-dollar organizations. And you think about it, it sounds like a long time ago, but 1989 isn't that long. I mean, I was around, you were around, it that long ago. I mean, he bought the team for $100 million, 140, whatever it was, $100 million, whatever it was.
Peanuts.
Think about the income of your house and think about business, man. That shit don't accelerate to that level. So he deserves a lot of the credit. And I see a lot of this in the comments, and we're going to jump to him as well. Is looking at Jimmy and Jerry. And what was your thoughts on that? Because I'll be honest with you, a lot of me, I'm very pro Jimmy, and a lot of it, when you listen to it early, when it all happened, I blamed it all on Jerry, right? Blame it all on Jerry. But when you really listen, and you listen to Jimmy Johnson as well, it was both of them. I mean, both of them could not push their egos aside. Jerry just wanted validation. He wanted Jimmy to say, hey, we did this together. Where Jimmy was kind of like, hey, I did all this stuff. And I think it's just a battle of egos that drove to the separation. Kind of sad, that it did that. But I mean, what's your thoughts on the separation with Jimmy? Did anything change, or you still feel the same way?
No, it a lot changed. But see, this is why I say in life, don't ever listen to the gift horse. Listen to both sides. If you don't live in somebody's house, if you don't know people, if you don't know the other side of the story and the truth, you can't form an opinion and treat that person or persons that way accordingly based on what other people say or the one person says. And too many times in life, because people can't get the other side of the story, or they're not inside that room with those folks, we all have a tendency of running with what we hear and going with it. And when you see this documentary, what was so compelling in it, and the fact that I could not leave this series until it was over, was Jimmy. Some of the things that Jimmy said himself, he admitted, and Jerry, at times I felt a little sorry for Jerry, because all he wanted was that validation from the struggles that he did trying to get the team, and how every time he looked around, he had a possibility of losing the team, and betting on it, going back to his childhood and the way they lived with his father, and then finally getting what he wants, getting the right man, getting him to come in, change that team around the way they did, and start winning Super Bowls. And Jerry didn't get the validation, and Jimmy he both of them egotistical. Jimmy, I have to give him credit, because Jimmy came in there and was giving trash, and Jimmy turned that trash around to greatness at his own mental expense.
Yeah, I mean, he left his wife, he did his kids. I mean, he didn't talk to his kids.
His own mental and physical expense. And in the two of them, all they had to do one time was to sit there and say, look, we both deserve credit for this. We both go on each other's neck. Let's just do this. Just have some small boundaries. Jerry, when I'm in the locker room, don't bring nobody in there. Don't bring nobody in. Let me get my thing out and then bring them in. And then Jimmy, okay, I understand. But when I'm doing this, Jimmy, I'm not trying to upshine you. It's just this. And they couldn't get past that. And boy, the things that Jerry said about how much he hated Jimmy, that's when I was like, hey, that's too deep.
I mean, it was tough. And the thing I would say, Jimmy was different. We love Jimmy. Yes. I mean, I'm Miami guys. I mean, God, I love Jimmy at Miami. I love him with Dallas. I mean, but he was different, and he'd admit it. And I had Coach Campo on our show a couple years ago, and we talked about it. And he said something to me that was just, it kind of cemented everything. He said, because we talked about Barry, because Campo was there in between, right? So he was Jimmy's guy at Miami. I mean, they go back way back. And then he stayed on the staff with Barry. And I just said, what's the difference? He goes, Mike, I'll tell you this. He goes, I've known Jimmy most of my life. He couldn't tell you my wife's name and he couldn't tell you my kid's name. And then he said, that's not a bad thing. He said, but that's the way Jimmy's mindset was. Everything, he was obsessed with football and obsessed with getting the job done and to hell with anyone else or anything else that got him his way. Barry Switzer, and you kind of saw it in the documentary, Barry Switzer knew Campo's family within a week. He knew, he remember his kids' names, always asked him how his family was. And it was just a different, Jimmy was a different mindset. And to, you know, Ultra's point, if you look back at his career, Oklahoma State, Miami, the Hurricanes, Cowboys, Miami Dolphins, he doesn't stay long because he goes in so hard.
Yes.
His mind and you can't go. So a lot of people talk about, man, if Jimmy stayed, you know, the Cowboys could have won more Super Bowls. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know if he would have gotten there, if he would have lasted as long. I think they would have. I think he would have at least one more. And
maybe two. Maybe two.
But the one thing I would say with Jimmy, and we'll get into it a little bit later, but just since we're talking about him, the team would not have dipped as fast as they did when he left because Jimmy was a great evaluator of talent. You're going into Plan B free agents or regular free agent, not Plan B. You're going into unrestricted free agency. Dallas started losing a lot of guys. Jimmy would have done a hell of a lot better drafted. And a lot of people will go back to the Miami Dolphins and say, well, geez, you didn't win with the Dolphins. But you got to remember, I lived down there at the time. So you got to remember this. Dan Marino was there. Dan Marino was an aging quarterback. Dan Marino is a legend. Dan Marino jerseys are still probably the most popular jerseys you see at the stadium. Dan Marino is still everywhere. He could not move on from Dan Marino. He tried. It was not going to happen. Yeah,
that's right. He did.
But if you look at you look at the guys he had, the Jason Taylor, Zach Thomas's, you know, all the guys that he drafted, he still was a damn good evaluator of talent. I mean, that never stopped. That never stopped.
All he needed was a quarterback at Miami. But, you know, because of who Dan Marino was, he couldn't pull on Dan Marino what Jerry did to Tom Landry because that would have been awful. So you couldn't do it that way. But Ultra, Avezzano, rest in peace.
I missed that. I got to watch that.
I was fortunate enough in Oakland when I was stationed there at Travis Air Force Base. I was fortunate enough to be on the field for the entire game for the Cowboys, right by them on the bench. And I got a picture with Avezzano before the game, and I still got it, and I cherish it. But Jimmy, I think Jimmy would have given us two more at max. But after watching the documentary, something came to mind. I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago when they asked Jimmy, Jimmy was on his boat, and they asked Jimmy, Jimmy, have you ever thought about coming back? And would it be like? Jimmy said, no, because physically and mentally, I wouldn't be able to do it. This. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe because he got older, he's been fishing. This nailed it because with Jimmy, the way Jimmy went all in and knowing how long he was with him and with the Canes and what Jimmy said himself, Jimmy probably would have had a nervous breakdown or a heart attack or an anxiety attack if he tried to stay longer. Because when Jimmy went hard, it's like putting your foot on the accelerator in a car when it's parked and letting that engine run and all day long and trying to see if the piston's going to pop. He never, ever, ever let down. He was all in all the time. The difference was he's going like this at you, and then all of a sudden Barry Switzer comes in and goes,
yeah.
And what brought some gloss in my eyes was when Charles Haley started talking about Barry Switzer and how Barry Switzer became close to him and how it started. That brought gloss in my eyes, man, because Charles Haley was a beast and he had some serious mental issues. And nobody wanted to really address him, be his friend, talk to him. And Barry just went straight to that man's heart. And it was legit and sincere. And that, and then how Jimmy realized the relationship with him and Aikman wasn't working. And one day out of nowhere, he invites him over, and over something as simple as the calmness and the serenity of looking at an aquarium.
Yeah.
What Jimmy used to do to calm himself when he got Aikman, that was kind of, he's telling Aikman, come over, I fish aquarium this. It sounds crazy when you hear it, but mentally, I know exactly where Jimmy was, and that tightened the relationship between him and Aikman in a rare situation that you would think it would get together some other way, not over an aquarium. And it wasn't so much about the aquarium, it was the serenity and peace around it and what it meant to Jimmy after games when he went to his safe space and how he brought Aikman in. And that whole thing, if you watch it, man, intellectually, it shows you how some of the smallest things you can do, unorthodox things you can do when you just take the time and approach somebody sincerely, how you can change the entire atmosphere between the two of you.
Yeah, and I mean, Charles Haley was a difference maker, and he was one of those key pieces, and they talk about it obviously in the documentary. And this is one of those things where you got to give Jerry his due as well, the risk taker that he was, because I saw a comment from I think Steve where Charles Haley pissed on the general manager's desk in San Francisco, and Charles Haley was different, and he would test you. And we had guys, I mean, Gogan's been on the show. I mean, James Washington, obviously Campo had some funny stories about Haley. And we had Barry Switzer on. We're going to get into Barry Switzer in a little bit, but we had Barry Switzer on the show too. And we'll talk about some of the differences, good and bad, with him. But with Charles Haley, for them to take that chance, and really, again, the 49ers were the cream of the crop at that time. The Cowboys were this young team that was kind of coming up. And for the 49ers to either think so little of the Dallas Cowboys and where they were going, or thinking Haley was just going to be such a disruptor that it was going to tear the team apart, for them to trade him to the Cowboys really changed the balance of power in the NFC. And you credit Jimmy for being able to work with Charles, understand Charles, lean on Charles, get the best out of Charles Haley. And obviously the move that Jerry made, picking him up at the airport, something as so simple as that. When he sees when Charles pulls up and sees the owner of the team grab his bag and picking him up at the airport and, talking to those little things that they did back in the day, it meant a lot to some of these players. And the impact of Charles Haley, I don't know if the Cowboys win 3. I think they'll win a couple, but I don't know if they get 3 rings without Charles Haley. He was just an impact in the locker room, but he was a major impact on the field as well.
He was, man. And Haley gets credit. He needs the credit and the attention far above what he's gotten. And the 49ers' biggest mistake was, you could tell they weren't people. Yeah. They weren't, because what they did with him was just, instead of looking at this man and understanding there's an issue, let's try to address it, they just expected him to correct himself. They just expected him to just get well on his own. And they didn't. And what he was doing for the 49ers would have made them better, even tougher in those stretches if he had still been with them. But boy, when he came to the Cowboys and the way Jerry met him at the airport and treated him at first and spoke to him, first I was stunned that Jerry even had that kind of emotions about himself to do that with him. But boy, when Haley said, and if we played them 49ers, and Steve Young, you could see Steve Young cringing when he knew Haley was coming, because they knew he was coming to take out revenge. And for him to go up in that office and piss on that man's desk, it wasn't a metaphor. He actually did it. Haley is pure. What you see is what you get. And he said, there was like 3 different Haleys. And the way he was in the locker room with the Cowboys, the way he picked out his target, who he messed with, and then the humility he would have when he became the other Charles Haley. That's what I admired about him. Yeah. He recognized his deficiency. He recognized his illness. But back then, there wasn't a lot of help for that, even in society. And so he had to fight his way through it. But between Jerry and Jimmy, those two addressed him as a man, as a person that they recognized had an illness, but they addressed it in the human factor, which made a major difference in that man's life and with the Cowboys. And boy, he went out there and gave it all. Nobody gave it. Nobody in the Dallas Cowboys gave it all like he did.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And he was so impactful. Yeah, definitely appreciate it. Make sure you guys hit that thumbs up. And if you're new to the channel, definitely hit that subscribe. We're looking back at the America's Team documentary, came out last week, 8-part series. I mean, I saw someone's comment about the Bulls' last dance. It definitely was done like that. I mean, it felt really good. And one of the things that was big is, and we'll get into some of the individual stuff with Aikman and with the triplets in the end, but just looking at the Cowboys and when they parted ways with Jimmy Johnson. Like I said, I had Barry Switzer on the show a couple years ago, and we kind of talked about it, and he was pretty open with a lot of things. Mm-hmm. And I would say this, and some people might hammer me for it and some not, Jerry said 500 guys could coach this team, and I don't believe that. Right. I think Barry was the right person for this team where they were at. And what I mean by that, he was not going to change anything. All he wanted was loyalty from his coaches. He was clear on that. His personality was a change from Jerry. Now, it came with some problems. Now, you understand this. It came with some problems, but I'm talking about taking over that team then. I just don't know if another coach could have come in, because they were in a no-win situation. If you win, it's because of Jimmy. If you lose, you screwed it up. You were handed, back-to-back Super Bowl champions, and you basically screwed it up. So what I say, I don't blame Barry for the talent level drop that happened. Barry was not he wasn't Jimmy. He wasn't evaluating college guys. He was a figurehead. He was that coach, the rah-rah speech, get to know you, let your coordinators do everything. He was not picking players. He was not saying who we should draft or any of that. So I blame all of that on Jerry. I'm talking about from a coach's standpoint. At that time, he was probably, I don't know if the Cowboys would have won a Super Bowl with someone else, because I think it just the train would have really run off before it. Obviously, we'll get into 96, but it would have run off sooner. Do you have any thoughts on that? Agree, disagree?
No, I believe it, because prior to seeing this documentary, my whole perception about Barry Switzer was that Barry, I always liked him because of his demeanor, but Barry Switzer was just a figurehead, and the team coached themselves, and he didn't know what he was doing out of his element. Now, after watching this documentary, hearing him, and you're talking about all of them were sincere and straightforward, but the most realest of real people is Barry Switzer. Yeah, Barry is who he is. He says what he says, and he doesn't say it out of malice. He says it because that is Barry. And Barry, what he did for this team, he nurtured these players, not purposely. He literally nurtured these players as he would nurture somebody he loved. And he knew who to go talk to and how to nurture them, and stayed out of their way and trusted that they do the right thing, because now Jimmy stayed in their ass. They loved it because it's like the substitute teacher coming in, we can cut up. But then when they start cutting up, and Barry would go in there and talk to a person here and there, and it would bring them back to reality, and he didn't have to get in their case. And then, of course, with Aikman going on his feuds, and Michael being one of the generals of the team. And I'm gonna stop real quick, because I'm gonna tell you something about Michael. Michael intelligently had one of the biggest influences on that team, and the heartbeat and the conscience of that team. And this documentary showed it. But when Barry came in, the way Barry nurtured that team, Barry knew exactly what he was against. Barry knew nothing about the NFL, but he knew people. And because of how he knew these people and how to nurture and how to talk to them, eventually they came around and understood his philosophy, and they started getting their act together. But yes, I give Barry credit. Anybody else comes, even Campo or anybody else comes in after that, I think they go way off the rails because they didn't know how to work this. And it's almost like fate.
And it's just a media thing. He was basically, remember Bozo, the coach? And he just got annihilated. And some of it, rightfully so, some of it maybe not. And I think where the problem, on the flip side of it, the problem with Barry was, and Michael Irvin talked about it, he felt these guys are professionals. These guys are men. I'm going to treat them like men. I'm not going to sit here and babysit them. And unfortunately, things got a little out of control. I mean, it got a little out of control with the
So-
Cowboys, between Eric Williams and Michael Irvin and all those guys. I don't want to mention names in case they get
Yeah.
but it's like some of those guys at, the White House and all this kind of stuff. The one thing I would say that I learned on the flip side with Barry and everything that happened. I mean, I left that I left that documentary just feeling, even though Troy Aikman had a Hall of Fame career, he really got cheated on an even better career than he had.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
Just the way the team, not necessarily, I mean, Barry, they had their things, but the way the team was and the demise of that team so quickly and how Aikman had to become Jimmy Johnson, which you never want your quarterback to become that guy. That's a coach's job, but he almost had to be the coach and listening. I mean, I've heard some of his sideline, outbursts, but they really played a lot of them in listening to the frustration, the hurt, the pain. I mean, I think he got cheated, but what are your thoughts on that, Greg?
Mike, I'm gonna give you a personal story. When I was in the Air Force, I was a Troy Aikman because, and I'm gonna tell you why. My father raised me as a leader. My father's in the Air Force. I get in the Air Force, so I love people. I know how to nurture people. I know how to deal with people, but I don't take BS. You either do your job or you're not doing it. So when we have a winning team in the Air Force and our boss, our big chief, who 20-some years later I become chief, our chief is managing and running that shop, and he's nurturing, he knows how to deal with people, but he makes sure the job gets done. You love to be led by people like that. And I loved it. But every now and then in the Air Force, there's a thing called fresh expertise. That's when a chief is not a chief, he's an E9. That means he doesn't lead the team. The team goes crazy, just like how the Cowboys went loose. And the unspoken leader steps up and has to be that person and voices. And I remember myself, how Aikman went off on the sideline and players. I used to be like that in Air Force when we had an E9 instead of him doing his job. And I'm an E7, and I see everybody going to hell's way, and the operation ain't getting done. The mission ain't getting done the way we want. And I'm accustomed to that leadership. So I would step up, and now I'm the enemy because somebody has to rein this mess in. And when I saw Aikman doing that, I was like, damn, I used to do that shit. That was me, because I understood Aikman. What Jimmy Johnson brought, that leadership, that direction, that discipline to win. Aikman wanted to win like Jimmy, and he knew we had the team to do it. And it wasn't just his career. It was about what the team's mission was to do and the greatness ahead of him. And when Jimmy left, everything went awry. Everybody felt it was a playground until they got that together. And Aikman now becomes the enemy. But Aikman really is the savior, because he's trying to tell them, guys, don't slip. We still got a mission to do, and we still got to get it going. And the way he used to talk about Barry Switzer, I used to say the same thing about E9s. We got a chief that's supposed to be running this shop, and he's not. And this is why so-and-so's going on. This is a travesty. That's Aikman. So I admire what Aikman did, and I wouldn't, if I was Aikman, I wouldn't have any regrets, because Aikman wasn't doing it for selfish reasons. He was doing it for the team. And now for him personally, yeah, he's in the Hall of Fame, but he could have had him 5 Super Bowls. He could have been even greater, which means the accolades would have been shared among everybody, because they would have been greater, because they would have stayed on that level. But when you go from 100 miles an hour to 5 miles an hour, somebody on that team, somebody in that organization is going to despise it, because they are used to leadership. And when that leadership is gone, there's going to be problems.
And I think a lot of people, and I saw Ultra thing with Dak, you have all these comparisons, right? Romo and Dak, and their numbers are so much better than Aikman's were. And it's a different game. That's why I always say you can never compare eras. But when you're talking about a quarterback, there's so many intangibles that go with it. I mean, they are the CEO. They are the leader. They are the ones that everyone looks at. And sometimes they're trying to they got to keep this locker room together of chaos and all this other stuff that goes with it. So there's so much pressure on a quarterback. That's why you don't really see, you don't see a ton. I mean, there ain't a ton of Super Bowl champion quarterbacks. I mean, you think about it, like, Montana, what did he get? 4? Aikman had 3. You had Brady with 6. You got Bradshaw with 4. You got Mahomes with 3. So you add all that up, man. It's very hard to be a multiple Super Bowl champion. That's why I'll give Plunkett, I'll give Eli their credit. Now, do I think they're Hall of Famers? No, but they're damn good quarterbacks, because if you're winning multiple Super Bowls, you got to be a true leader in that locker room. So maybe the numbers aren't always the best, but you got to be a true leader in the locker room. And I think that's probably the case for Plunkett and for Eli. But and maybe that should count, give them the benefit of the doubt of the Hall of Fame. But, watching Aikman and Barry, this is where I'd give Barry some trouble. And some of the things that Barry was doing was counterproductive to the Cowboys, and it made Aikman become the asshole, for lack of a better word. And then when Aikman would get in these guys, tails, and you saw the one with, and I never remember this. Maybe it just didn't make the headlines in Florida, but the incident with Kevin Williams, where I guess he was chewing him out for not running the right routes and not being ready, whatever it is. And for Barry to kind of turn that into a race thing, and then it gets out in the media, and now you're at the Super Bowl, which I didn't remember. Now you're at a Super Bowl, and you're at this, and you got Michael Irvin and Emmitt Smith. Got all these guys that are having to defend Troy Aikman on racism. Right. I can't believe that anyone would believe that in 1 second. I mean, all you got to look at, Michael Irvin was getting ready to go to prison for 20 years for drug possession. The only guy that showed up, in the courtroom, Troy Aikman stood by his side. Yep. And Troy Aikman to this day says he's just one of those few guys that you say, I love you. He's one of those guys that, he's that close to him. So it was kind of disappointing that I heard that. I never learned that. I never knew that. And that was a disappointing part of the documentary that came out, that he had to deal with that crap.
And Mike, ever since I was a kid, I follow the Cowboys close. And when it comes to what happens off the field, you only know what you hear in the media. I never, until this documentary, never heard of that. And I think when I listened to it, it sounded to me like Barry, what Kevin them told Barry took out of context and ran with it, putting that racial spin on it. Because when I'm listening to the whole thing, I'm like, Barry automatically assumed that's what it was about, and he ran with it. And all he had to do was throw it out there, and it got bit on, just like bait. And Barry, I fought Barry for that, because Troy obviously did not do that, was nowhere near doing that. Michael was the closest to Troy than anybody on the team. Michael knows it didn't happen, but Barry, you could tell the way it went about. Barry was sloppy with that communication. He took what they told him, and they didn't even come out and say he said something like, but he took it and he construed it as racial. So he threw the word racism on it. And that's what got blights. I mean,
let the media get a hold of it.
And that's all the media needed, was some controversy. And that's a shame, because Troy, one thing about Troy that you learn in this, Troy's not a emotional person, compassionate person. And Jimmy wasn't. Yeah. And that was so compelling to me about how the two came together so close. At first they weren't, because when you got two people that way, they don't come together like that, because neither one of them are this hug and take it out. So they're like this. But then when Jimmy brought him into his world, brought it that six-pack in there, brought him in his world, and they got a chance to sit down and tap into both of their emotional side that they never do, they realize they're more alike than they are apart. And that's what made them be so close. But when they put that spin on Troy, which was wrong, and then during the time that they did it, that was the most vulnerable time to bring the team down. And you're going to Super Bowl, but Troy went through it. And to this day, you could tell Troy is still pissed about the fact that somebody would put that label on it, even though it's been dispelled.
You can still see it. You can still see it.
Troy was on a whole different plateau about winning and everything, and it just got misconstrued by Barry. That was where Barry was sloppy with the communication, and Barry needs to own up to that.
Yeah, and you think about it, like they didn't talk. Like Aikman was like, "I'm done talking to him," and they didn't talk the rest of his time that he was there.
Yep.
And that's what I mean. Cheated of a better careers like that.
Yep.
Now we got this question. I'm going to defer to you because I didn't see Staubach play. That's before my time. You did. I saw Aikman play Staubach. I mean, just watch. I'll give my opinion. Just watching like the history of the Cowboys. I mean, I would think Staubach would be ranked higher just because of everything he did, the leadership he had. He's got the rings. They went to the Super Bowls, all that kind of stuff as well. So I'm going to say Staubach, but that's just going on history. What do you say? You saw them both.
Listen, I watched Staubach when he came in the league, and I watched Staubach throughout the entire league. And I'm going to tell you why Staubach was better. Troy had one thing going for the Cowboys after the biggest draft and all those free agents and whatever that helped his greatness. Troy had the Great Wall of Dallas. That wall, even John Madden said, it ought to be a crime to have a team or offense like that where nobody can even get through. You can't even push a sandwich through there. Troy had time back there to read a book, and that's what you dream of when it comes to protecting the quarterback. And that substantially helped his greatness. I watched Roger. He got the name Roger the Dodger when he was at Navy. He came to Dallas. He still had to do the same thing. Roger didn't have the opportunity of standing in the pocket all the time. Look, Roger was running his ass off. But Roger had athleticism like you wouldn't believe. And even when he ran his ass off, he knew how to still hit somebody down on a target. He did it the hard way. Roger above Aikman because Roger had to do a lot of it on his own. His offensive line was not the greatest. And Roger still managed to take these guys to Super Bowl. He was a field general. He was everything you want in a person, everything you want in a football player. And without his athleticism, Roger never makes it to the Hall of Fame. With an offensive line like Aikman has, Roger gets about 6 Super Bowls. So Roger Staubach.
And they're both Hall of Famers. I mean,
Roger Staubach, hands down, of all the Dallas Cowboys quarterbacks, is number one. That's why the first signed jersey I got on my wall was Roger Staubach and then Drew Pearson. But people who didn't know the Roger Staubach era and all they see is highlights and stuff, of course they're going to say Aikman because Aikman got 3 rings and this and that. But no, if you were fortunate enough to watch Staubach play, you would understand Roger is number one. Then it's Aikman.
Yeah, I mean it's Staubach. I mean, shoot, 2 rings, five Super Bowl appearances, pretty not too shabby, and both of them are Hall of Famers. I mean, just here, be very thankful the Cowboys have had 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks in their franchise history. I mean that's pretty good. I mean some some don't even have one. I mean, do the Eagles have a Hall of Fame quarterback? I don't even know if the Eagles have one.
No.
I don't think Jaworski's in the Hall of Fame.
No.
But I mean, it's tough. I mean, you look at what the Packers were able to do with Favre and Rodgers, and then you can even go, way back to God. Why am I forgetting his name? The best
not Dan Meredith.
God,
I know you're talking about.
I'm looking at his face. I'm having.
I know you're talking about. I forgot his name.
I met him. My brother got a helmet signed by. But anyway, just so many great quarterbacks. Some of these franchises had. Cowboys very, very fortunate, and Staubach was a great leader, like I said.
Yes.
I mean, just a great leader. So I mean, that question always comes up. I can deal with that one. What I don't want to hear is Romo's better than Aikman and Dak is better than Staubach. I mean, you got to have some hardware for me to put you in that class, But
Romo would be 3. Of if you line up quarterbacks, I would say Romo would be number 3, because Romo played. They just couldn't get it done, and it wasn't all Romo's fault, but they just couldn't get it done. And Romo, if not for a bad referee call, Romo probably goes to his first Super Bowl.
My man's got Danny White ahead of Tony Roman. I'm the Danny White guy. We talked about that. I mean, Danny White was my guy.
You can have a debate. You can have a debate between the two. But listen, off subject real quick. I believe And I really do believe in my heart of hearts that Eli is a Hall of Fame quarterback because Eli won 2 Super Bowls.
Yeah.
He beat the New England Patriots. No other quarterback with the New York Giants takes them to the Super Bowl and win. Yeah, Eli was real quiet, nerd. He wasn't flashy, but Eli got the job done. Every time we played the Giants, the only player I ever feared the most was Eli Manning. I feared Eli Manning every time we played the Giants.
That's
he found a way to beat us.
It's a tough one because he was a 500 winning percentage quarterback. And I don't have an issue with it. My only issue is if Super Bowls are going to be your measuring stick for Eli to get in, you got to put Jim Plunkett in. Jim Plunkett's got 2 rings.
Yeah, now Jim Plunkett deserves to be in. Period.
I mean, if that's the measuring stick, then you got to put Jim Plunkett. Jim Plunkett won 2 Super Bowls, I think, with 2 different coaches. Was it 2 different coaches? Was Madden one and then Flores? I think it was. I'm not.
But see, when you say you got this is where the problem is. The people that are in the Hall of Fame, look who votes for him now. And when we say, well, if you put Eli in, you got to put Plunkett in. It's not that there's not an if or. Both should be in. The writers who vote, the people who forget about the players from days gone by, the writers who weren't even born and watched football back then, but they have a voting ticket. That's the problem. You need to go back and look at the system that's set up. I would say at least 100 players should be in the Hall of Fame. Now, one comes to mind all the time is Too Tall Jones. And the problem is it's the voters. It's those voters who weren't around during those times. There's those voters who are biased and the media never played the game. And now when you look at people selecting people in the Hall of Fame, they don't even go way back from the inception of football and look at the great ones and bring them in. They go immediate. We get more first-time ballots now than they ever had. When I was a teenager coming up and in my 20s, you didn't see first-time ballots going in as fast like this. But they forgot about all these players back in the day who earned it. And unless somebody comes out and goes out on a protest form over and over and over, they don't get noticed. So it's not so much that Eli's in, and if Plunkett don't get in, you shouldn't put Eli in. No, they both should be in. The writers, the voters, they should do their job and put those people in that deserve it. It's a bunch of them during Plunkett's era that are not in the Hall of Fame, and it's a travesty.
Yeah, and I would say Snake must have been the other one for under Madden.
And look how long it took for him.
Yeah, I don't know the Raiders.
He had to die.
I would say this is why I love Eagle fans. Sonny Jurgensen, they're going to claim him as their Hall of Famer. I mean, the guy didn't hardly play with the Eagles early on. His career's with the Washington, but they want to grab on. They want to ride the D of another franchise's quarterback because they don't have one. You don't have one. That's the point. That's the point of the story. You don't have one.
The closest one they got is Harold Carmichael, but not a quarterback though.
I'm talking about quarterback.
Not a quarterback.
Donovan McNabb would be the closest one, or Randall Cunningham.
But Mike, let me ask you, what do you think about Michael's role in this documentary? How you remember his Hall of Fame speech would bring you to tears because Michael didn't hold nothing back. He told the truth and admitted all this and said this and that about himself. And from that day forward, he's been that way. Even in this documentary, he didn't try to hold nothing back. He came straight out and told it all of what he did and everything. And the conscience that Michael had during his career to be able to go to Jimmy and the way he was able to talk to Jimmy about what they needed to win, that didn't get a lot of attention back then.
No.
But what made me laugh was how he said, he went to Jimmy and said, here's a list of who needs to go. Here's a list. You need to cut these people today.
Well, I mean, but that's what he was dealing with. And that was the bad thing. Like, I'm a Landry guy, right? Because as a little kid, I mean, you looked up to Landry, and I tell the story. I wrote a letter to Jerry when they fired Landry and all of this stuff as a kid. But that team got comfortable. And there were guys there just collecting paychecks. And that's just unfortunate. They needed a change. So as much as I hated to see Landry go in the way that it went, it was the best thing that, I don't know if any other owner, I mean, we talked about with Bear, I don't know if any other owner would have had the balls to do it that what Jerry did. I mean,
Yeah.
you were coming in, they were vilified. I mean, I didn't live in Dallas, and I was a kid, but they were vilified there. I mean, they were hated there until they got it turned around. And and I don't know if another owner, if he had bought the Cowboys from Bum, would have made that change.
No, and it was like people, like I said, people weren't around during that time. I was. Everybody talk about how the Saints used to have bags over their head and the ain'ts. Well, folks, let me tell you, there was a team that used to be like that before the Saints, and it was the Dallas Cowboys. And the problem was Landry didn't see the speed of the NFL changing. He didn't see the NFL was changing and how the players were coming in faster, how things were happening and changing in the free agency. And Landry kept them same old players, some of them who could barely move. He kept them because he thought this mystique will continue. And Tom Landry didn't see the vision. It just went right by him. And it's not because he didn't want to win. He just didn't see that the NFL had moved on from that type NFL, and it was becoming better and faster and bigger, and he didn't see it. He stuck with the same people. And a lot of those folks said, well, if you're going to keep and barely run, I'm going to stay. That's a paycheck. And when Jimmy came in, Jimmy recognized that right away. And Jimmy's like, no, these guys should be out the pasture somewhere. They should be out on the farm or somewhere retired. They're not ready to play football anymore. And that's where it changed. But Landry, I will always say, of all the Dallas Cowboy coaches, my most favorite coach was Tom Landry. I love the hell out of Jimmy Johnson. Now, those two, for me, I put them side by side. But Landry has a special part in my heart because I grew up watching Landry with the Cowboys and what he did. And he didn't have that interpersonal skill with players either. And he looked at it as a business. But it's because of his military background. He used to fly in the war, and it was a different demeanor he brought to the sideline. And I understood it because of his military background. And people that never served wouldn't understand Landry's style of how he managed players. And he managed them just like you would be in the military doing. So I understood that. But the way he was able to win and the discipline that the players were on, because they automatically knew. Tom didn't have to say nothing to you. He just had to get that look. Yeah. And they knew, I need to get my act together. And it was professional. It was almost like Chad Ochocinco when he went to New England. And he said, first thing I told my friends, I can't beat Ocho here. No, because Belichick didn't have to get in your ass. All you had to do was look at him. He can just say, well, we got to get this done. And that was it. Landry was the same way, but Belichick did have a side where he would get in your ass. But Belichick, for the most part, didn't have to say nothing. That self-discipline, you knew when you got to New England, you had to handle your business. And that's why Belichick, people say, well, he knew how to change people that the careers were washed up and make the best. No, it wasn't that he knew how to do them. They knew when they got there, it was all business. And they knew you couldn't be how you were with other teams. And it brought the best out of you because Belichick didn't care who you were. He'll tell you in a minute, you're out of here.
Yeah. No, it was no nonsense. And another thing, just talking about impact of coaches, and you talk about with Irvin, the impact, and this one blew me away during that documentary was, when he had that neck injury and he's paralyzed on the ground, and the shouldn't play. He got, he said some coach, he was able to get someone to kind of say he could play, but one wrong hit, he'd be done. He said if Jimmy Johnson was there, he would have played. If it was Jimmy Johnson was still there, he would have risked his life and his enjoyment of life. Could be stuck in a wheelchair, paralyzed for Jimmy Johnson. That's the kind of impact that Jimmy Johnson had on a lot of these players. And that's to your point. He wasn't him and Barry and some of these other guys, he wasn't that soft-spoken and wasn't that, players coach that they like to say. He was that father figure to a lot of these guys. He was the one that's going to keep you in line. He was, because you didn't see all this stuff that unraveled under Barry. You didn't have that with Jimmy. No. Jimmy was very straightforward, man. He always used to joke. He said, at 12:30, you need to be in a bed. He goes, I don't care what bed it is, but you need to be in a bed. you know, and where Barry just kind of treated them like men and just kind of said, hey, you guys are adults. You gotta handle your own stuff, and you guys be mature. And those guys couldn't handle it. I mean, Moose was on our show, and he talked about that a lot.
Yeah.
Is, you know, Barry gave the guys the freedom, but sometimes, you know, you got to know who you're dealing with, and sometimes you can't give them that freedom. You know,
you can't.
Control, so.
And people love to be led, but at the same time, they despise being led. But when they're winning and succeeding in leading, then they're happy, and then they're happy that the leader is the person that he is to them. And it's amazing. And that's how Jimmy was. You saw how all the players talked about Jimmy. He was an asshole. Jimmy's an asshole. Jimmy's this. But and they loved to be led by Jimmy because they saw the success, but they hated to be led by Jimmy because they couldn't screw around the way they wanted. But Jimmy knew how to get the best out of you. Everybody has the best in them. It takes a leader to help get it out, but you're not going to like it. You're not going to like it, but you're going to see it and enjoy it when you see yourself getting the best out of you and you succeed. And then you come back and you love that leader. But during that time when that leader's trying to get you there and the team, you hate them. And it's in life. That's how it is in life. We love to be led, but we want to be led our way. But then when we're not led our way, we don't like it. But then when we succeed because of that leadership, oh, we're happy and we love the leader. It just happens. And that's how Jimmy was.
No, that was the great thing with Aikman. He could be, there was good cop, bad cop, right? Jimmy's in their ass and he's agreeing with everything he says, but he can kind of go over there and say, hey guys, man, don't worry about him. I got you. Let's do that. But he was agreeing with, you know, and that was the special relationship that they had, you know, between Aikman and Jimmy that made things so successful, because it's so important for the quarterback and the head coach. If they're not like that, it's trouble. And you saw it with Barry. I mean, they didn't talk. I mean, Jimmy, you know, Aikman wanted nothing to do with him, and that ended up really leading to some problems. But just a great documentary. I mean, you don't have to be a Cowboys fan. It's like I've had friends of mine like, man, should I watch this documentary? I said, dude, I'm just telling you, if you love story, drama, and you're a sports fan, it's a great documentary. I wasn't a Bulls fan. Obviously, I love Michael Jordan, but that Last Dance was phenomenal. I mean, it was just so interesting. And then the Kobe story. I wasn't a Kobe fan. I appreciated Kobe more, unfortunately, after his death than when he was here, because I always said he was a Jordan wannabe, right? My blinders are on. I'm always Jordan. Don't ever compare anyone to Jordan. But Kobe had that mentality. And, you know, everything that happened with Shaq and the whole thing with Shaq and people gave Kobe the rift of it. But even Shaq came out later and said, I wasn't, if I would have listened and I would have been doing what I needed to do, we probably would have won 10 rings in LA. And Kobe just wanted to win so bad. Everything of him was about winning. And I think Aikman was that way. Jimmy was that way. And Michael was that way. And I think that's the unique thing of it. And I'll just leave it with this, with the triplets. I mean, I don't know if you can put three guys together in one, on one team. And what people really need to understand, if they don't know the history and they don't know, these guys all came up together. That's what made it so special. You had Irvin get drafted in 88. You had Aikman in 89. You had Emmett in 90. It was bang, bang, bang. And they sucked. And they all took their lumps, and it wasn't like you built a team and you grabbed all these guys and, you had to, because there's so many people that want to compare the next triplets or these guys, the triplets, but these guys, it was so unique because they came up together. They took the beatings together and they made it to the mountaintop together. And I think that's what made them so special. All three Hall of Famers, all three arguably in the top rankings of their position all time. Just what's your thoughts on the triplets? And you guys, had the opportunity to watch them play. Thankfully, I saw their whole career, so it was awesome. But then they all left at different times, right? It was Irvin first, then Aikman, then Emmett was the holdout. He's still there hanging on. But what a special bond they had. But I don't think you see that again. I don't think.
Well, listen, like I said, Father Time has been on my side. My original triplets were Tony Dorsett, Roger Staubach, and Drew Pearson. That's the original triplets. That's the original. Wait. Let me explain. a lot of you guys didn't get to see that era. And because you didn't get to see that era, you didn't see the greatness and the bond that those three had back then. And like we were talking about the quarterback, Aikman and Jimmy Johnson's not being together, that happened way before them with Roger Staubach and Tom Landry. It was the same way. Roger Staubach and Tom Landry weren't on the same page. Roger Staubach was Aikman back then, like Aikman was during his time, and Tom Landry was a Jimmy Johnson back then without all the fervor of fighting and talking at its mess. But Roger and Tom Landry did not get along because Roger was an Aikman type leadership. Landry was still leading from the past, and Landry didn't understand what he really had. And Staubach knew what they had and what they can do. And Landry went on the page. The original triplets was the Dorsett, Staubach, and Drew Pearson. And if you lived during that era, you would see it and understand it. What happened to Drew Pearson? Car crash. What happened to Michael Irvin? Neck problem. What happened to Staubach? It got to the point where he couldn't take it anymore. It was getting too many concussions because the team was old. Tom Landry wasn't changing up. He had to leave. What happened to Aikman? Same thing. All the concussions. Had nobody to block for him. Aikman had to finally leave out of there. Dorsett was the last one. Who's the last one out there for the triplets?
Yeah.
Emmett.
No. Yes.
So, the comparison goes, if you watch both eras, and the reason why I say they were the original triplets, these were actually named the triplets, so they got the nickname triplets. But when I look at them, the composition of the three and why they call them that, the original triplets of the Dallas Cowboys were the Dorsett, Staubach, and Drew Pearson. But a lot of people didn't watch that era.
I love Tony Dorsett. He's the reason I'm a Cowboy fan. And I would say my true Cowboy fan, 72. I'm guessing you're born in 72. That's not, I mean, let's be accurate in what we're saying. Charles Haley, Jimmy Johnson had a lot to do with Charles Haley and coming there. Jerry did as well, but they don't say without Jerry, there's no Troy. Jimmy was not ready to get rid of Troy. I don't know what world you're living in on that one. Dion, I would agree. All right. Dion was all Jerry. 1,000%. That's all Jerry. Jimmy was gone, but I'd be, Troy wasn't going.
Right. He wasn't going nowhere. He wasn't going nowhere.
And you bring up the whole Steve Walsh and the Berline. I mean, Jimmy's mindset was he was with Berline, he was going to ride the hot hand. I mean, Berline came in there and he was hot and the team was going, and it'd be hard to argue to do it differently. You've seen it happen in playoffs all the time where they end up going with the backup, right? The backup's hot to keep it going, and that wasn't
Carson Wentz.
The key to Aikman really was obviously North Turner getting there, and really getting that system that he put in there. I mean, they had Mike Shula and whoever else,
Bush Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to So anyway, but that's it on that. But just great memory. And look, those were triplets. I was just like when I look at Aikman Smith, I just never seen three guys come up in the draft class the way they did, get their ass whooped, and then build it. And that's the whole team. And I think that's what made this 90s team so special was they all came up like kind of together, right? You had the Eric Williams they added, and then they had Stepnoski in the draft, and they had, Moose Johnston. They had all these guys kind of Alvin Harpers and Kevin Smiths. And we didn't even get on the Herschel Walker trade. I could talk about that for 10 hours. But I mean, that was really the catalyst. But it's what you do with those picks. And that's where Jimmy Johnson gets the credit. Aikman was the easy pick, right? He was going to be number one no matter if Landry was there or Jimmy was there. Irvin was already there. Emmett was the one that not a lot of people were high on. And I mean, you're in Florida. You grew up in, you live in the area kind of where he grew up. Not a lot of, he was too slow, a lot of carries, wouldn't be able to hold up, wouldn't be able to do this, wouldn't be able to do that. And I mean, he ends up leading the NFL all-time rushing leader at the end of his career. Pretty amazing in his career.
And a lot of teams passed up on him because of all that. But part of that documentary that really I got a little bit. I felt a lot more respect for Herschel Walker when he admitted first. He was like, "Oh, so you're going to trade me for this and this?" Because Herschel thought he was the man. Obviously, back then he was a straight up and down runner, but he was a bully. I mean, he was like a bull, so he can knock you over. But Herschel even admitted, that was the best trade of all time. And I understand now why they traded me. He said, I understand it. And basically he agreed. He agreed because he saw what it did. And he admitted that was the best trade of all time because what it did for them by trading him is what got them where they were. And to hear him say that and admit it, and if you watch this documentary, I'm telling you, it's unlike any documentary you've ever seen. It is so compelling.
It is.
And everybody just came clean. You didn't, not one person on there did you feel was holding back. I mean, everybody came clean, good or bad. Berline to me, Berline was basically saying, he didn't say this, but it's like, I didn't give a damn about Aikman. I've been around the league. I wanted this position. And if I got it and I kept it, this was going to be my team, period. And the players at first were kind of, oh, who is this guy? But he went down a stretch of winning games when Aikman was out. I mean, a stretch. He got him there. And everybody, all of a sudden, now they warming up the Berline. All the team was warming up the Berline like, well, shit, we don't know what's going to go on with Troy, but hey, we got a successor right here. And then when it comes down to Troy comes back, because Troy really wanted to come back, you could see the worry in Troy that he might be losing his position because Berline was winning. And Troy was really worried with the leg injury and the fact that Berline was playing great and he was getting the notoriety, and Troy and Berline had that confidence, and Berline didn't give a damn. He did not, not one time did Berline say, well, you know, I knew that Troy is going to be the starter anyway, but I was trying to hope. No, Berline said, and Troy wasn't there, and, you know, this is mine to go. I mean, Berline was like, okay, Troy, fine. If they could trade you as far as I'm concerned. I'm the man. I want this. Berline felt like.
I mean, he had a confidence.
Yeah, he felt like he had earned the opportunity because the teams he played on, you know, they didn't give him they didn't surround him with that type of talent. Now he's got that talent, and everybody finally get to see Berline is a lot better than what people thought Berline was because he got the talent around him to do what he needs to do.
He was just one of those guys too. He was a very good backup, and then he went to Carolina. He went to, you know, he was at Oakland before, but he was just one of those gritty guys, man. And I always liked Steve Berline, and you know,
I'm glad he got a ring.
Yeah, he got his ring. I mean, Herschel Walker needs to get a ring. I mean, that's who they mean to go size him up because to your point is he's there. And again, I saw another response. Jimmy didn't have to be sold on Charles Haley. I hate to disappoint you. He did not. Jimmy's thing with Charles Haley is the one thing he liked was smart football players. So he asked a question. He asked a question of people he knew at San Francisco that were from the Miami era, from this and that. And this is all documented. Mm-hmm. Is Charles Haley a smart football player? Because he can reason with smart people. If he's a smart football player, all the other antics. I mean, Jimmy Johnson came from Miami. He didn't need to be sold on anybody. I lived in Miami. I grew up in Miami. I got Jerome Brown and all these Alonzo Highsmith and all these guys. Yeah, Jimmy can deal with anybody. Trust me. You don't have to sell him on anything. If the dude can play and the guy can come and help the team win, you don't need to sell Jimmy on nothing. So
no, and I
disagree, but it's fine. I mean, everyone has their own visions and own thoughts, and that's what I loved about the documentary. It kind of answered some questions that you were just kind of unsure of, and then it had some things where it's like, damn, I remember that. So it was cool. It was a cool documentary. I'm glad they did it because I just, you know, history. I love history. And I'm watching the Kingdom, the Chiefs Kingdom. They're doing that documentary on ESPN. I'm going to check that out. I just like history of sports and history of competition and all that kind of stuff. I still watch The Last Dance when it's on ESPN.
And you know, I was stationed down there from 85 to Hurricane Andrew 92. And fortunate to be down there in Homestead, which is a stone's throw away from Miami, to watch all that and know that Jimmy, I knew what kind of players and all the antics that was going on down there with the U.
Yeah. So I mean, they used to crank all the rooms of the other teams. They'd find out what rooms they were staying in and just.
But you know, one thing I like about this documentary too, the timing with the new culture that Shotty is trying to initiate with the Cowboys. And if they need to make this documentary a must-see for every Cowboys player. Because if they see that, the drive, inspiration, and motivation that they can get from watching this documentary, being a Dallas Cowboy, that would make these guys step to a level beyond what they even are imagining. To see how this team came together and to hear everything on the sidelines, hear the personal testimonies. The Cowboys players, I'm sure they all seen this documentary. If they watch that, if they don't come out this season inspired and motivated, knowing that they're wearing a star in the legacy of what this documentary showed, the shoulders that they stand on now after watching that, man, if I was a Cowboy after watching that, even at practice, I'll be like, man, I'm ready to tear up something. I'm ready to go do something. Because the timing is perfect. The timing, it didn't come out during the season, came out right before the season. This is the perfect timing for every player on that team to watch that documentary, and they can see the grind and the hustle and the sweat and the tears that and the sacrifices that these guys put in to achieve a Super Bowl. And when they watch the part about the 49ers game, when they beat them that first time in Candlestick, and how that grind was, and play-by-play, and the war that went on between
the hatred that those teams had.
Yes,
the true hatred you had for each other.
That game alone in the documentary should make them realize I'm going on that field and I'm laying it all out.
Yeah. I mean, it's just so it's just football's not that. I saw Steve saying. I mean, the players, it's not like that today. I mean, it's big business. It's big. Where these guys are friends. These guys, you're moving around. You didn't really have that then. These teams were built. These guys stayed on that team. They went through it, and they built a hatred for other teams, and it made it very, very entertaining to watch. And grateful that I was able to live through that era and be able to see it and vividly remember the 3 Super Bowls and vividly remember the hatred that the Cowboys had towards the Redskins and towards the Packers and the 49ers. I mean, the only enjoyable part was like the Eagles. We ended their season every year, just beat the shit out of them in the playoffs and just embarrass them, and then off they go. That was it. That's the only beautiful memory I have, because the Eagles were just so non-relevant then. It was just embarrassing. But anyway, I digress of what I'm going to do. But, hey, guys, wanted to chill with you for an hour this morning. Definitely love the likes, love the share, hit that subscribe, all that kind of stuff. Like I said, we got a great show. Kelly and I will be with Jesse Holley on Monday night. You know Jesse Holley, former Cowboy. He's active with the Dallas Cowboys. I believe he's on the I forgot what network he's on now, but does a lot of stuff with the Dallas Cowboys. So he's going to be hanging out with us for an hour, talk a little bit about what his thoughts on the Cowboys as you're approaching the cut down. You got to get down to 53. And then we'll be doing another live show Wednesday or Thursday. Jimmy and I will be in the house as I'll be getting ready to go down to Miami to see the Canes and Notre Dame go at it. And then, of course, NFL season will get kicked off and rolling. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So make sure you guys hit that subscribe. Like, there it is. Thank you. DLLS. I wanted to say DLSS. Thank you, Christopher, for helping me out. But definitely appreciate it. And thank you so much. And for all you guys, thanks for hanging out with us in the morning. Greg, what do you got going on the rest of the day? You just chilling, enjoy the Sunday?
Yeah, just chilling. But let me throw this last thing in there.
Yeah.
When we talk about how the 49ers were always our rivals, both coaches, both eras played in Candlestick. We lost to the NFC Championship with Landry. And back when Joe Montana was with him, we lost in Candlestick when Steve Young beat us. And both teams they played in the Super Bowl. The Chargers, Cincinnati Bengals at first with Kenny Anderson, and then the Chargers with Humphrey. Dallas would have wiped them off the map. Either 49ers or Dallas. But if we get past the 49ers in Candlestick on the catch by Clark, or the one where the second one we played them with Young when Jimmy Johnson was there, we easily have seven Super Bowls. We easily have 7, because neither one of those teams would have come close to beating us in the Super Bowl.
Yeah. No.
But yeah, for the rest of the day, I'm just gonna chill out, man. It's sunny today. We had a hard rain yesterday. We shouldn't be getting a harder rain today. So sit back today and just chill.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. Over 300 of you guys hanging out in the cave. Always appreciate the support, especially on an early morning. It always feels good. But make sure you hit that like, subscribe, thumbs up on the way out. Thank you so much, Greg. Appreciate it as always, man. This was a lot of fun looking back. Now we got to look forward. Now we're going to be looking forward to this season. We got to get this thing rolling. And one last shout out to the Dallas Sports Network, recognizing your boy as a Spotlight fan. And they're going to be doing a little thing on there. So you guys, I'll let you guys know where it's at so you can check it out. But it's going to be a lot of fun. But appreciate all the support, everyone. Thank you. I'll see you guys Monday night back in the cave. Have a great Sunday. See you.
Give me somebody that's hungry. Give me somebody that's hungry. I need somebody.